Easy.
Sure, so we're live. Welcome to this Hangout, whether you're watching it live or watching it afterwards. We have been joined by Jeremy Harbour. So Jeremy is in Mallorca. The sun is just coming up behind him. Fortunately, we've moved, so we're not looking quite into the sun. So I think most of you are familiar with Jeremy already, but I'll just share. I met Jeremy just 5 or 6 years ago, and spent a weekend here in Singapore when I was living in Thailand, learning from him about just a completely different, or it was for me at least anyway, a completely different way of looking at businesses and looking at ownership and looking at the opportunities that come around when you start to view businesses in a different way than most small businesses tend to. I think most small business owners tend to obsess on customer value, and one of Jeremy's I guess skills is the ability to see shareholder value in a very different light. So he's very kindly agreed to come and have a chat with me on this. So Jeremy, I know we've chatted a couple of times. You've spoken at a couple of my events. I do appreciate this other opportunity. Do you want to just kind of give us a quick background on yourself for those that don't know, and a quick update as to what you're doing these days?
Yeah, no problem at all. So yeah, thanks for inviting me along, and I look forward to seeing you in Singapore soon. I'm out there for about half the year, and over here about half the year. So it's a nice balance. It's interesting you mentioned the customer value, shareholder value thing. So I would say that I'm 100% customer focused, but my customer is the guy that buys the business from me. So it's a way of thinking about the customer in a slightly different light, because ultimately, what are you building the business for? And really, you should be building a business to sell. And I can come on to that later. But so my background, very sort of entrepreneurial background, starting businesses when I was started my first business I think when I was about 7, but my first proper business when I was about 14. Screwing up lots of things, went bust when I was 18. Lost everything, started again. A fairly normal kind of entrepreneurial learning experience, as in failing forwards, I think is probably the right way to describe it. After a while, I kind of got the business growth bit sorted. So how do you do marketing? How do you get customers? How do you grow? And I realized that how you do that is you pour your entire life into a business. So I call it the blood, sweat, and years that you have to put into a business to grow it to the point where it provides a decent income, it provides a sort of semi-decent lifestyle, although you're still kind of working all the hours God sends, morning, noon, and night to keep the thing going. And then I basically had a little bit of an epiphany. While I was running my telecoms company, I was always having these other telecoms companies come along and try and buy me. It's a very acquisitive industry. And one of the things they all seem to have in common is that they weren't going to give me any cash up front. These deal structures were all built around kind of jam tomorrow. And being a sort of dynamic, fast-growing entrepreneur, I didn't have any money either. So I figured basically I could do the same thing. Maybe I could acquire a business without using any cash up front. And so I went around kissing lots of frogs until I found my princess, and eventually bought a 13-year-old telecoms business. They had Nintendo as a customer, it was a great little company. And I managed to buy that business without using any capital up front. It took quite a bit of jiggery pokery, but basically managed to get the deal done, no cash up front, and we grew by a year's worth of revenue in an afternoon. And I basically had a bit of an epiphany that you don't have to run the marathon; you can just run the last 10 yards, and you still get the trophy. And that was a really big shift in my whole mindset, because before that, everything I'd read and everything I'd done was all about pouring your, life into the business you're running, and yet all of a sudden I'd kind of proven myself wrong. I'd challenged my own paradigm by doing this kind of massive growth spurt without having to invest in Google AdWords or marketing or salespeople or anything. We just added 1,000 customers overnight, and it hadn't cost us any money. And the great thing was we knew we'd get those 1,000 customers. You know, we were acquiring them. One of the things when people used to ask me in my telecoms company, who's your biggest competitor? I would normally say apathy, because the people who you're trying to win as customers just can't be asked to move. They can't be bothered to change suppliers. So when you acquire a company, you get that apathy, you get that inertia that naturally comes with people's, you know, extreme kind of resistance to any kind of change. So even when you have a better product at a lower price, sometimes you can't market your way into a business. Great example is I was in telecoms, and telecoms was deregulated in the UK, and it was deregulated to the point where they actually had, by legal statute, every other telecoms company would be cheaper than BT. BT had to wholesale its own airtime to other providers at a discount. So basically, by legal statute, it was cheaper to be with somebody else. And yet, I think BT retained something like 87% of its customers over a 15-year period. You know, that's the power of apathy. 13% of a market moved when it was, you know, legal statute that it would be cheaper. So I started to kind of challenge what we're all doing this for, because when I was running a business, I was you know, in the trenches every day, battling with creditors, battling with customers, trying to grow the business and pouring everything into it. And when you really boil it down, I think we start businesses for many different reasons. And don't get me wrong, I think starting a business is still a rite of passage. You have to do it. You have to have that experience. You have to have that excitement, and also learn that it's not that easy, because I think business is really easy on the day you start, and it's only then that you start to learn really what this sort of incredible moving canvas that is business is all about. But I think you know, most people start a business for this kind of sense of fulfillment, this you know, being admired, or maybe being the alpha. You know, being, if somebody's built that way, or they do it for their wealth, or they do it for time freedom, or they do it so they can give back, or they do it because they want loads of really cool toys. You know, there's a whole load of reasons why people start businesses, and I don't think that any of those are particularly well served by starting businesses. You know, I don't think you'll get the fulfillment, the admiration, the wealth, the time freedom, the giving back, all the toys, particularly from pouring your blood, sweat and tears into a small to medium-sized startup for 10 years. You know, you might well get a reward towards the end, but ultimately you're going to create all of those things when you exit the business. And if you really only make money when you sell a business, then the easiest thing to do is probably to sell lots of businesses. And the easiest way to sell lots of businesses is to buy the businesses and then sell them. So really, that's the kind of focus of my attention for the last 10 years or so. And so I've done over 30 deals like that. I have grown business by acquisition, which is, you know, very low-hanging fruit way to increase the value of your business. I've done a lot of distressed businesses. Now, most people are scared of distressed companies because they feel like they're adding a rotten apple to a barrel. And really, I guess the most important thing to, you know, reassure people is that if you're buying limited liability companies, and if you're buying them at arm's length, there's really nothing to be scared of. You know, you'll often have accountants that want to charge you hundreds of thousands of pounds to do due diligence on the company, and they'll use words like, well, you want to make sure there aren't any nasty skeletons in the closet. Well, my view is you can always get rid of the closets. You know, with limited liability, you can pull the plug. You can liquidate the business. That doesn't mean you lose the customers or lose the bits inside. That just means you get rid of the bit you didn't know was there. You know, the mistake they made 10 years ago that you know, there's no reason you should have to pay for that. So that was really the big epiphany. And I think when I started to read all these books, so you know, I think when I was growing up, I read lots of books, went to lots of seminars. I was always learning, because I didn't learn in the conventional way. I left school when I was 15, and all the books I read and everything that I kind of studied led me to believe that you need to start a business and work really hard. And then obviously I challenged that paradigm with buying a business, which really wasn't a lot of work in comparison, and created a lot of value very quickly. And funnily enough, when I go back and read all those same books, I realise that all the people that say start a business and work really hard make all their money doing deals. Every entrepreneur that you look at that you respect added a huge chunk to their wealth or to their value by acquiring something or selling something. You know, the list is so endless. I probably won't bore you with it now, but literally look at the entrepreneurs out there, and you'll realise that's how they did it.
Yeah. So how are you spending your days now? So you've kind of you've done a lot of these deals, and you spend half your time in New York and half your time sort of Singapore.
In Singapore.
Bali.
Yeah, well, I spent time in Bali, so I've got a big land investment project in Bali. I own a hotel in Seminyak. I don't know if you know that or not, but I bought that last time I was over. Yeah, I spend a bit of time in Bali, quite a bit of time in Singapore, a bit of time in Mallorca. One of the things that I do have is kind of more time than work, and I try and encourage other people that I work with to get to that same sort of position, because I actually think that the correlation between work and money is a bit distorted. I'd possibly even say it was inverted, so that the more time you spend doing something, the less money you make. And that sounds a little bit bizarre, but actually what I think happens is that if you're working all the time, you don't have time to put your head up and see the opportunities. And every day there are opportunities kicking around, and what you learn to do is become a lot more discriminatory about the opportunities, and therefore only do the ones that are really cool or really exciting. So, for example, this year I've been to the UK for 2 days, which was for a wedding, and I'm about to go again on Thursday. Actually, I'm going this afternoon, shit. So I'm going this afternoon, but I have a meeting tomorrow. And the meeting tomorrow is a £6 million deal. So instead of you know, trying to do something every day and make a little bit of money, you wait a long time, and then you do one deal that makes a lot more money and is a lot more interesting and has a lot more sort of bells and whistles and things attached to it that make it more interesting. So I think the first step is you have to create that time vacuum. And that sounds a little bit weird, but actually I think, you know, when people say to me, when's the best time to sell my business, I generally say now. And any reason they can come up with as to why they shouldn't sell their business now, I can use as a reason why they should sell their business now. So if they think that the reason they shouldn't sell is they've got a contract with BP just around the corner and that they really need to wait until that comes off, I would say, great, well, the buyer's going to love that. You know, the buyer's not going to buy a business if it doesn't have some great opportunities just around the corner. And also, it's very easy to sell the business for what it's worth now and have some kind of link to a future opportunity. So if you really do have a tender sitting there waiting with BP, why not say, okay, well, I'll take, you know, 1.2 million for the business now. I want another million if I can pull that contract off with BP. Because guess what? The dream is often worth more than the actuality. So when you do get the contract with BP, it will probably be a total pain in the arse and swallow up all the spare cash in the business. You won't be able to deliver what you said you could, and you don't make as much margin as you think you will, and all the other normalities of business will start to kick in. You know, everything ultimately transpires to be harder than you think. So sell the business now. And what happens when you sell a business? Most people think that you're selling a business for money. Sold it. Not only have you got the time, but you've also got the capital. And if you think about it, the one thing that entrepreneurs never have is time and capital, and they're the kind of magic ingredients to having lots of fun and growing really fast.
So so one of the things I know that, because I've sort of spoken to a lot of people about this, and obviously I've now bought and sold a few companies. For most people, they only buy, or typically they only sell a company once. So that's kind of the typical entrepreneur journey, is that you create a business, you build it up, and you sell it. What are some of the mistakes that you see for the market? People watching this are generally small business owners. They've built up a business. What are some of the mistakes? What are some of the opportunities that you see on a day-to-day basis?
God, so many. So I mean, most businesses have a very steep growth curve, then plateau. After the plateau, they tend to either go down or stay plateaued for a long time. The thing that I see is quite often people that have stuck in a business for 20 years and it hasn't moved for 10 of them. They might think they've got 20 years experience in this field. Really, they've got 1 year's experience 20 times over, and they haven't really added much value in quite a long time. The other thing is sticking around too long. I've been guilty of this myself. I got so excited by my ability to buy businesses without using cash. I bought all sorts of things. So I describe myself as being sector agnostic in the respect that I'll literally buy anything. So I bought a health club and spa that was like a 15,000 square foot spa. It cost 3.2 million to fit out 3 years before. And the deal that I structured actually meant that I was given £25,000 on the day that I took 100% shareholding in the business. So it was a really cool deal. But it was also like a bit of a trophy asset, and I could have sold it straight away for about £1 million. I ended up keeping it for about 6 or 7 years. And that 6 or 7 years that I kept it then coincided with the 2009 January complete meltdown in the health sector, which was just after the banking crisis in 2008. Any discretionary spend basically got cancelled, and gym membership was one of them. And so, ended up with a business in a hole because I stuck around too long. It's the biggest lesson is sell, now, because you just don't know what's around the corner. I had a business which was generating £200,000 a quarter net. Pounds a quarter net profit. Most of that profit was derived from a 3-year contract with the world's largest insurance company. And again, I would challenge anyone, if you're making 200 grand a quarter and your biggest client is the world's largest insurance company, you'd probably be pretty bullish about your business. But the world's largest insurance company was a company called AIG, which you may have heard about, which also suffered, really badly in the financial crisis as a result. That business also failed. So you just don't know what's around the corner. The biggest lesson, I think, is to take action now, because you can't predict what's around the corner. You can't predict that the business is there. Too many entrepreneurs I come across when we talk about what their wealth is, most of them don't have any wealth outside their private residence or their business. And if your business gets in trouble, quite often that can have a knock-on effect on your affordability of your private residence. So really the two things are intrinsically tied together. So actually, when it boils down to it, most entrepreneurs haven't planned for any kind of wealth external to their business, and that's a really dangerous place. That's all your eggs in the basket. So, again, exiting and taking positions in several different things is a really good idea. And then the most kind of common one, I guess, come across is the thing that I call when the horse is dead, it's time to get off, which is the flogging up a dead horse scenario, where people are only in a business because they've put so much time into it. And it's a total circular argument in that they don't want to leave because they've invested 10 years in it. Well, that really just suggests they're going to waste another 10 years instead of really just drawing a line under something that's a bad experience. And people say, oh, well, that's defeatist and you're quitting, and shouldn't you try again? No, basically, I think you should try again at entrepreneurship. I don't think you should try again at a shitty business. It's amazing the time I put into businesses that didn't get traction, and it's totally dead time. And then you'll find a business that feels like you're leaning against an open door. So you'll get a deal, and then another deal, and then another deal. Those are the ones that you should be focusing your time on. And sometimes you just need to, push at a few doors and see which ones fall open. And once you find one of those, you should put all of your energy into the one that feels easy. There's nothing wrong with taking that path of least resistance, I think, and really capitalizing on it when the sun shines, make hay.
Yeah. So how do you recommend that people get started on that journey? Because I know for a lot of people it seems like it's a very big jump from the day-to-day business to acquiring another business. So what's kind of what's an easy first step, if you will?
Yeah, so I always think that I've been quite lucky because I've not been polluted by a background in accounting, finance, corporate finance, M&A. I don't have an MBA. So I haven't been polluted by any of the conventional wisdom. That might sound a little bit strange, but actually, when in my course, the Harbour Club, we challenge quite a few of the bits of conventional wisdom, and we break them down into why they exist. And actually, when you do break them down, there's often not a lot of logic in it. Too many people approach the acquisition of a small to medium-sized company a bit like a procurement process, where you kind of suck your teeth and tut and chastise people for coming up with the valuation that they came up with and all of that kind of stuff. What they don't realise is that ultimately it's two guys sitting opposite each other, at a table, and ultimately they just have to come up with a deal together. So it's more like a sales process. It's two people got to shake hands at the end of it. So if one of you is behaving like a procurer, the other person will then also go into the same sort of mode. You'll have this long, drawn-out, ineffectual process. Whereas if you approach it from a problem-solving perspective and both parties just sit down and try and solve a problem, then that will help enormously. But your question was, how do you get kind of started? Well, you can do it my way. I mean, literally, I just went out and started talking to people, and I bumped my head quite a few times. And as you heard, I had a couple of businesses go bust. In fact, more than a couple by now. Didn't always get things right, but basically I taught myself. It was 20 years of teaching myself, but it's eminently possible to do. Unfortunately, because of the nature of this type of M&A, there really aren't any books or anything out there that really any public domain stuff that can really support you. And that was one of the reasons, I think, back in 2009. I decided that I would teach a few people how to do what I do, and it came about for a couple of reasons. So one of the reasons was I had people that wanted to partner up with me or to work with me, and it was how do I get remunerated for that? So people were offering me sort of non-exec positions or consulting. And I was making large amounts of money every time I bought and sold a company. So why on earth would I want to take some kind of consulting job? It just didn't seem to make any sense. And then, bizarrely, I bought a company that did training seminars. And after buying the company that did training seminars and sitting through a few of them, I thought, well, maybe I should do it as a seminar. That way I get some money for giving people all the information that I've got, plus I build up potential partners in the future. So when somebody brings me a deal, I know that the deal looks exactly like I want it to look because they've already done my seminar and they understand how it works. If they want to just go off and do it for themselves and not involve me in any deals, which is quite often happens, at least I've been fairly compensated for my time in terms of delivering the information. So I actually designed a course back then. That was in 2009. Designed a course called the Harbour Club, which has evolved incredibly since then. But the original course was £37,500. That's about 70,000 Singapore dollars. And as soon as I realised that people would pay 37,500 for it, I put it up to 45 because price testing, you have to do this, so that's getting close to 100,000 Singapore dollars, about 93 or something like that. I realised that people would people really enjoyed this course. So what I did is I basically took them away for a weekend. We did fly on a private jet to Saint-Tropez, and we stayed in a nice villa. And I did a weekend training course where I taught them how I basically went through all the case studies of the deals that I'd done, and we went through how to source them, how to sit down and have that meeting, how to do the various components in the deal. And a really great thing happened. One of them was obviously I met lots of new business partners that I could do deals with. But also the content of what I was teaching evolved incredibly, because before that it was just me alone with my own crazy thoughts in my head, running around from deal to deal. Now all of a sudden I had to present it to people. I had to actually break down and work out what it was I did exactly. And I've used this analogy before, but I described it as it was a bit like I'd stuck a bucket down a well, and I was so excited that I found water that I forgot to stick the bucket down the well again. It was like there were loads of things that I tried once, they'd worked, and I'd never tried them again. because I'd gone on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So the process of teaching it actually enabled me to pull a lot of process out of what it was that I was doing. And then the other thing is that it enabled me to test a lot of process. So through 2009, I did 5 of these courses, each one with between 4 and 5 delegates. And we were able to test all of the different components quite ably, and really find out the best ways of doing things. And then basically I decided that instead of doing the giant course, which was over a 6-month period, including this weekend of training, I decided that from a lifestyle perspective, I just wanted to teach the weekend and then work with anybody who wanted to work with me afterwards, rather than having this kind of 6-month period of enforced partnership. So I shifted the model to just a 2-day course at my house in Mallorca. No private jet, so I'd fly them on a budget airline out here, and just spend a couple of days going through all of the tactics. So again, the same stuff. How do you source it? How do you hold the meeting to do the deal? The various kind of deal structures you can use. What you do once you've bought it, because there are some quick fixes, some low-hanging fruit that you can attack to fix the business. How you sell it. And then just recently I've added on some wealth stuff on there, so what to do with the money when you get it, because the biggest risk with entrepreneurs is then you investing money in businesses, and that's a really bad idea, because giving money to businesses is like giving crack to children. They'll always come back for more, and it's generally a bad idea. So how do you protect your wealth? How do you build wealth for yourself and your family instead of being an entrepreneur with money, basically, which is a terrible combination. So that was kind of how the course evolved. And for people that did the course back in 2009, I actually invited one of the guys who did the course, a guy called Craig, back in 2009. He did it. He's done about 12 deals since then. His last deal was the net to him was over $2 million in profit, and that was a training company that he'd bought, I think. So I invited him on the kind of 14 course, having done the 2009 course, and he said how much of it was new. There was so many, particularly on the deal structures and the turnaround tactics, how much new stuff there was on there. Now, obviously, a bit like, I guess, when you live with someone, you don't notice the small changes, over a long period of time. Obviously, because he'd been away from it for 4 years and then come back to it, he saw, it's really evolved and changed. So instead of spending $90,000 on it, now you spend a fraction of that, and the information has got steadily stronger and stronger and stronger and more tested.
Cool. So I know our mutual friend Daniel Priestley was on one of those first one. Yeah, and it was his very enthusiastic endorsement of you, which convinced me to fly from Bangkok to Singapore when you were over here. So I guess that must have been in 2009. I thought it was earlier than that. But just always feels like a long time knowing you, Joey. So I guess that must have been in 2009. So you've got all this new content. You've had a lot of people have come through these weekends over that time. What are some of the traits of what makes a good deal maker? What makes someone that can spend a couple of days with you? I mean, I can certainly attest that the content's fantastic, but what are the traits of those people that then go out and start doing the deals and getting the results that we see?
Okay, so I would say 2 things. One of them is somebody that just goes and applies, because lots of people love the intellectual part of it. I mean, for a start, it's like you've read about the deals where a business was sold for £1, whether it was MFI or Game, whatever it was. So everybody knows these deals have £1, but sometimes people just like to know how. So it's a bit like you've seen the magician do the trick on TV. You'd love to know how that trick was done. So there's you get people that sometimes do it for the intellectual reason, and that's not always the best performer. The best performers tend to be the people who then really just go out and apply what they've learned. Knowledge without action is no value at all. So yeah, going out and delivering is a really important part of it. And the other part, I think, is just that ability to connect with people. So rapport, basically. So if people are good at getting rapport and good at having conversations with people, that's a huge step up. If you get people that are over analytical and are going to regress to this them and us situation in the meetings, where they put their procurement hat on, they're the ones that really struggle with this. Whereas if you've got the people that are just personable and are sitting down with another fellow entrepreneur and looking at how they can jointly solve a problem that entrepreneur might be facing, they're the ones that are going to really win over. And it's really just those two things: the application of the stuff I give you, because the stuff that I present is very tactical. So it's not kind of, here's a theory of how something might work. It's like, here's a case study of how I did something, and here's some of the little tweaks and quirks that exist within the deal that you can go out and apply, and here's some sentences you can use which really help you bring the thing to a head. So it's very tactical. If anything, there's probably a bit too much information over the 2 days. The thing I find, I've got a very short attention span, so I like lots and lots of punchy content. The thing I find when I go to other seminars is that they normally, if it's a 2-day course, they normally spend a day telling you how awesome the thing the next day is going to be. And then the next day they'll give you like an hour of awesome stuff, and the rest of the day will all be around the kind of implementation and that kind of thing. If anything, I would say I'm light on the implementation. If I'm being honest, I'm light on the implementation, but I'm extremely high on the content. So you will take away 50 things you can go and apply, of which 5 of them in your particular business will probably be absolute game changers in the way you look at things, and that's what the typical kind of feedback we get afterwards. Is that people find there's lots of really good stuff in there.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting, because even though this is definitely framed as how you acquire businesses and understanding that, I certainly from my own perspective, there was a ton of stuff that made me, the changes that I could go back and apply to my own business immediately and to do that. Because I know you're coming to Singapore to do one of these programs on the 10th and 11th of April next year. Can you just kind of outline for people that are interested, what's the format of that weekend? I mean, like you said, that it's very heavy on content, and I can certainly attest to that. But just to give people kind of an idea, what do they expect? Who are the people they're going to be with, and what's going to happen? Okay.
Well, first of all, we're really lucky that ABN AMRO Private Wealth have offered to sponsor the event, so they're providing the venue and the food. That's basically because 5 of my Harbour Clubbers in the last 6 months have become ABN AMRO Private Wealth clients. So they've been able to deposit the required multi-millions of dollars that you need to get to become a client. So I think they've realised that there's a good connection with trying to catch these entrepreneurs before they enter the private banking sector. So that's really nice. But the upside of that is I don't know where it is yet. So because they're sponsoring it. But it is in Singapore, so at least we know that. But basically, it'll be over 2 days. The first thing that we're going to really cover is, apart from obviously an introduction to everybody there, and we always do very small groups, by the way, so that we have lots of question time and lots of interaction over the period, because it is quite a new topic for most people, and it's a very broad topic. But the first thing we get into is how you find opportunities, because really, if you don't have a deal to look at, then everything else becomes pretty academic. So we go through a few different systems that I've used in the past that enable you to routinely attract the right kind of deal. So whether that is looking to roll up companies into your own business, or whether that's to find completely fresh opportunities in other sectors, and also whether you want to do distressed. How do you find distressed companies? Because when they've appointed an insolvency practitioner or sought help from their accountant, it's normally too late. So you want to try and get to them just before they take any other action on their business, so that we have a chance to fix them, really. Then the next thing is what do you do when you found one? Because generally you might know that a business is in trouble and you might know that they need your help, but when you ask the entrepreneur how business is, it's their best week ever. So it's about having an in with that entrepreneur that makes them open and want to talk to you. So we go through that. Then the next thing is how you hold a meeting with them. Because we've got to get over this them and us situation, and the way I describe it in the course is we want to drag our chair around to their side of the desk so that we're looking at the same problem together and fixing it together. And it's how do you take a meeting from being a them and us meeting with everybody being very skeptical to having both chairs on the same side of the desk and looking at the problem together. So the meeting is a very important part of this. And really interestingly, we actually present our acquisition deal at that meeting, at that first meeting. And that surprises a lot of people because they think, well, how do you understand the business after just a few hours? So it's really important that we explain how that works and how we can do that. The next thing that we go into, we cover a whole load of stuff on legal requirements, so how not to get in trouble, how to make sure that you're protected, that your business is protected, that you don't get any legal issues with government's tax, all that kind of stuff. So we cover a whole load of that stuff. We then do the deal structures. So with the Harbour Club of old, I used to just present a whole load of deals that I'd done, and then say, so there you are, you can see how you can be really creative with the deal structure. What I've done by kind of popular demand is break it down into some kind of cookie cutter ideas of how you can go out and do the deals. And they're all kind of no money down structured. And I also include my kind of current method of operation, which is enables me to do kind of 7-figure plus deals with no money down. So once I show people that, they're normally more excited about that, but sometimes you need to do your first couple of deals before you can do these bigger ones. Really just to give you the credibility and some deals you can point to when you're having the meetings with the next ones to show that you can do this successfully to get the credibility. Then we go into what I call financial engineering, so the how you fix a business's balance sheet. And there's lots of different ways of doing that, but some of them are really, really surprising in terms of how you can take something that basically today is worth nothing and tomorrow can be worth 6 or even 7 figures. And so it's how do you mess around with the balance sheet. I call it financial engineering. I think financial engineering in finance terms is actually something called qualitative analysis, which this isn't. But I call it financial engineering because it's tinkering with the balance sheet. We then do a whole load of stuff on insolvency law. Sometimes when you buy a business, you can tinker around with the balance sheet, but ultimately there's an illegal trading situation. And what I mean by illegal trading is that they're unable to meet their debts when they fall due. And in law, if you're unable to meet your debts when they fall due, you're insolvent. Now, that's not the end of the world, actually. All you need to know is through using insolvency law how you fix that and how you make it, how you make it work going forwards. We then do a whole load of stuff on exit preparation, so how you prepare the business for sale. Even if you're not selling it, it's a good idea to prepare a business for sale because it's a good system to go through to protect your own asset and also to really have the business ready. And then we do exits themselves. Now, quite a few people have come on the Harbour Club just to do the exit part of it, because if you employ a business broker, they'll typically take 7.5% to 10% of your transaction value, and sometimes they'll charge a fee up front as well. And that fee dwarfs the cost of doing the Harbour Club. So before anybody even thinks about selling a business, they should definitely come and do this, because it will show them exactly how a broker finds a buyer for your business and how you can basically do it for nothing. I mean, and that probably goes for each component of the course. You know, if you paid someone to find a deal for you, it would cost a lot more than the Harbour Club. You know, introduction commissions on acquisitions, again, typically are a percentage of transaction value. If you employ an accountant to do all the due diligence and all of that stuff, that will typically be a multiple of the value of the cost of the course. Legal fees, you can spend 20 grand in legal fees and not buy a company very easily. So doing the Harbour Club again makes that seem very, very cost effective. Sure. And that's an important point. People often ask me, apart from the cost of the course, how much money do I need to complete a deal? Realistically, you only need kind of expenses. You need to be able to post a few letters, go to a few meetings, car parking, petrol. So in Singapore, that's a lot, but but no, literally, kind of running money for a few months is essential. But you don't need. I mean, when I say there is no money up front, I literally mean there is no money up front. And I mean, I used to never take fees from businesses. The way we pitch it to the companies we're buying is, look, our goals are completely aligned with your goals, that we don't make any money unless you make money, and therefore we're doing this all for equity and no expenses. What I found is actually on the really big deals, on the much bigger deals, it's really easy to also take some fees. So why not? It means you have that extra component in the deal, which all helps. So yeah, that's pretty much what we'll cover.
Cool. And then so I know, so your courses are limited to 10 people. I know I've already got myself and 3 others that are going to be doing the program. What happens, for those not familiar, what happens after the program? So you have 2 days of getting your brain exploded by you. Then what?
Yeah. Yeah. Then I mean, obviously my goal for this isn't to try and get a few $1,000s from each person sitting around the table. My goal is that in every room of 10 people, there's 2 or 3 who are going to be really hungry and do lots of deals and will want me to be involved in them. Now, funnily enough, all my businesses are based in Asia, all my businesses are based in Singapore, but actually the quantity of deals I've done on that side of the world are much, much smaller than the quantity of deals I've done over in Europe. And I'd love to rebalance that over the next year. So really, anyone that has any kind of opportunity for a deal, I'm more than happy to partner with them and help them not only close the deal, but also find an ultimate buyer, or work with them on an acquisition or roll-up strategy for their business. So let's stick a whole load of businesses together, let's list it on the stock market or whatever. So yeah, basically everyone who does the course has my Skype address at the end of the course. I'm always available on Skype for asking questions just by text, so just type a message to me and I reply fairly promptly. Don't just call me, that really irritates me. type me a message and I'll answer all day long. And then if it's something where you think there's a mutual opportunity, something where I could add value to the proposition as well, let's do the deal together. And to give you an idea, I've done about 6 deals this year, and only one of them has found me, and the rest of them have all come from previous delegates of the Harbour Club. So it is how I find most of my deals now. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, look, that's fantastic. I'm really excited about it because as I mentioned, I still have my notebook from when we first did the program together. Yeah. I still regularly go back to that. Yeah, bought and sold a few businesses based on that in that time, but we're really looking forward to your updated content.
Yeah, lots of new stuff.
Yeah, so that'll be good. And if anyone else is interested in that, please contact me directly. I'm putting together that group. It is on Saturday and Sunday, the 11th and 12th of April 2015. You can contact me at cl@callumlang.com or on Google Plus or Twitter or any of those others. But do get in touch, and yeah, Jeremy, I'm very much looking forward to having you in Singapore from April onwards.
Looking forward to it too. See you then.
Thank you for your time, much appreciated.
Take care. Ta-ra. Bye.
Bye-bye.